All right, let's jump into this deep dive all about public speaking. And specifically, we're diving into the book, Public Speaking Superpowers. You know, the one by Carma Spence. Now, we know you guys want to learn fast and deep. So we're going to skip the fluff and just bring you, like, the really good stuff. Like, you know, the actionable stuff from the book and all the really cool stories. Think of this as, like, your own personal masterclass in becoming, like, a public speaking superhero. Minus the spandex, of course.
What's really interesting about this book is it kind of reframes public speaking as this hero's journey. And you know, we all got to start somewhere, right? Spence actually really clearly lays out these different stages, like how to, conquer that fear of public speaking, and then how to actually hone in your skills so that eventually, you can even decide if you want to go pro, make it your actual career.
Okay, so hero's journey for public speaking, huh? But I got to ask, what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, no, you don't need to get bit by a radioactive spider or anything. The book uses those classic superhero examples, like even Superman, to kind of show how totally regular people can transform into these crazy powerful speakers. And it really emphasizes that even the most seasoned orators, they didn't always start out confident,
Yeah, that's kind of reassuring, actually, that even Superman probably, stumbled through his first flight.
Exactly. In fact, Spence even shares this story about herself, how she placed 5th in her first speech competition in high school. But get this, she was totally terrified beforehand. So, it just shows you that everyone starts somewhere and has that potential.
That's super inspiring. But let's be real. I think a lot of us listening have probably felt those, pre-presentation jitters.
Yeah.
So how does the book suggest we deal with that? What are the strategies to actually get over that fear?
Yeah, well, it offers a whole bunch of practical tips, actually. One of the things it suggests is to join, a speaking club, like Toastmasters, where you can get a chance to, practice in a really supportive environment, which can do wonders for your confidence.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Practice makes perfect, right? But what about, right before you go on stage? Any tips for calming those nerves?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that the book highlights is visualization. It's a super powerful technique. And there's even been research done with Soviet athletes, actually, that shows that even just mentally rehearsing can drastically improve your performance. It's almost like you're training your brain for success.
I've heard about that. I never really actually tried it. Maybe I should. And speaking of training, the book also mentions controlling your breath as a way to manage nervousness and even improve your vocal quality.
Yeah, for sure. Ooh, breathing from your diaphragm. Ooh. Instead of those shallow breaths can make a huge difference. It really helps you stay grounded and also helps to project your voice a lot more effectively.
It makes me think about, I was reading about President Lincoln, and apparently he initially had this really shaky voice. Through breath control, he actually transformed it into that super captivating baritone. Talk about a presidential speaking superpower. Okay, so we've kind of tackled the fear factor. What's next on this hero's journey?
So next is the really exciting part. It's all about finding your message, your unique message.
Right, but how do you actually turn your passions into a message that actually connects with an audience?
Well, the book kind of walks you through this process of deep introspection. And, it asks you some really thought-provoking questions like, what would you do if no one paid you? And it really encourages you to explore those childhood interests, your natural talents, or even experiences that might seem insignificant at first glance.
Yeah, it's uncovering those hidden gems within yourself. I really love that story that Spence shares about, her childhood passion for speculative fiction. And she even talks about how, she used to draw eyes on her classmates' hands for money, which just goes to show you that even those seemingly obscure interests can be monetized.
Totally. It really highlights how, your unique strengths and your experiences, even the quirky ones, they're all valuable and can be woven into your message. Think about what comes naturally to you, those things you might even take for granted because they seem so easy. Those often actually have the greatest potential.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all connects now.
Yeah.
You face your fears, you discover your message, but then how do you make sure you come across as authentic on stage? It's so easy to feel that pressure to be someone you're not when you're in the spotlight.
Yeah, well, Spence actually defines authenticity on stage as finding that sweet spot or your personal truth and the truth of your message. And The audience's receptivity all kind of intersect. It's not about pretending to be someone else, but rather about connecting with the audience on like a really genuine level.
So it's about being yourself, but also finding those universal themes in your experience, like actually resonate with other people.
Exactly. Think about those shared human experiences like self-doubt or facing challenges. Sharing personal anecdotes related to these themes can make you super relatable and create a powerful connection. The book even emphasizes the power of vulnerability in this context.
It's like embracing those imperfections
Yeah.
can actually make you more engaging and more memorable.
Exactly. And Spence also gives some really practical advice on like managing potential criticism because, developing that resilience is really key in this journey. And she kind of guides you on how to handle rejection and even how to like turn it into a valuable learning experience. Not every speech is going to be a standing ovation, and that's okay.
So true. Okay, now, shifting gears a bit. Let's talk about engaging your audience in today's world, which, let's face it, feels like an epic battle against distractions. So what are some actionable tips from the book for actually capturing and holding their attention?
Well, the book really stresses the importance of like tailoring your presentations to the specific needs of each audience. So pre-event research is super crucial, but it's also about mingling with the audience beforehand, because you can pick up on like nuances and insights that you wouldn't get just from research alone.
Yeah, it's about going beyond like the basic demographics, right? And actually getting a feel for the room.
Exactly. And then there's this idea of like reading the room during your presentation, being able to adapt to the mood and the energy levels can make a huge difference.
I saw a speaker once completely nail this. He was giving this presentation, and like in the middle of it, a space shuttle actually flew over the hotel, and he like paused, acknowledged it, and even like allowed a break for people to go out and see it. Talk about adapting to the moment.
That's awesome. That's a perfect example of reading the room and tailoring your approach to keep that audience engaged. Spence also highlights how important it is to make your topic relevant to the audience's lives. If they can't see how it connects to their own experiences, they're less likely to actually care about what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's about finding that common ground.
Yeah.
And demonstrating how your message can actually have a tangible impact on their lives.
Yeah, precisely. And speaking of impact, let's delve into like the superpowers of delivery, those elements that can truly elevate your speaking game.
All right, bring on those superpowers. Let's break it down. The power of voice, body language, and that intriguing power of silence.
Awesome. Let's start with the power of voice.
Okay, hit me with those vocal superpowers, the ones that make a presentation truly sing.
All right, so think of your voice as an instrument. You really want to use it to its full potential, exploring things like cadence, speed, clarity, and even strategic pauses can add a lot of drama and impact.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it. It's like the difference between Kathleen Turner's voice.
Does this do anything for you?
Versus Fran Drescher's.
My voice is hard to ignore.
Like, they're both iconic, but Turner's like rich, smooth tones
Yeah.
are probably a little bit more conducive to a captivating presentation.
Exactly. And it's not about mimicking like a specific voice. It's more about understanding the impact of those vocal nuances and using them strategically.
Okay, now let's talk about the power of silence. I'm so intrigued by how like a well-placed pause can actually enhance a presentation.
It's amazing, right? Spence really emphasizes how strategic pauses can like emphasize key points, create tension, and even allow your audience to process information. She even shares this really powerful anecdote about using silence in a speech on domestic violence, and it really allowed the weight of the statistics to sink in.
Wow, yeah, you can like feel the impact of that.
Yeah.
Just from her description.
For sure. Silence can be incredibly powerful and used effectively. And now moving on to body language.
Okay, spill those body language secrets. Let's get physical. What are the key takeaways on posture, gestures, and eye contact?
All right, let's start with posture. We already talked about how important good posture is, but it's worth reiterating that standing tall and confident can make a world of difference in how your audience perceives you. It conveys a sense of authority and credibility, which can actually make your message more persuasive.
So it's not just about like looking good. It's about projecting that confidence and authority.
Exactly. And then there are gestures, which can be super powerful when they're used effectively. The key is to use gestures that feel natural and authentic rather than forced or distracting. Think about like how you use your hands when you're talking to a friend or telling a story. Those natural movements can add a lot of energy and emphasis to your presentation.
Yeah, it's about letting those gestures flow naturally from like your passion and enthusiasm rather than trying to choreograph every movement.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the power of eye contact, which is arguably like one of the most important aspects of nonverbal communication.
Ooh. Eye contact, that can be tricky, especially when you're feeling nervous. It's so tempting to like, hey, just scan the room or focus on that like a single point. But I know that's not the most effective approach.
You're right. The book highlights how important it is to connect with individual audience members, making them feel seen and heard. So instead of like scanning the room or focusing on a single point, try to make eye contact with different people. Throughout your presentation, it helps to imagine like you're having a conversation with each person, even if it's just for a few seconds.
Yeah, it's about creating those mini connections that make the presentation feel more personal and engaging.
Exactly. And it also helps you to gauge like the audience's reaction. You can tell if they're engaged, confused, or maybe even bored, and then you can like adjust your approach accordingly.
We're not done yet. There's still so much more to explore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've kind of laid the groundwork, but now it's time to actually delve into those practical tools and strategies that can take your presentations to the next level. Well, let's start with visual aids.
Okay, visual aids.
Yeah, they can be like super powerful for engaging your audience and like really reinforcing your message. But it's important to use them strategically, You don't want your slides to like steal the show.
Oh, I've totally seen those presentations where the speaker is just reading off the slides. Like, why am I even here? I could have just read this myself.
Exactly. The important thing is you are the presentation. The slides, the visual aids, they're just there to enhance what you're saying.
So how do you choose the right visual aids then? Because the book talks about like all these different types, props, demonstrations, slide presentations.
Right. The first step is to just ask yourself, what type of visual aid will actually help me make this point?
Makes sense.
Like if you're talking about a physical object, right? Maybe a prop is a good way to like bring it to life.
Right.
But if you're explaining a process, then a demonstration might be better,
I get it.
And then for like data or complex info, slides can be really helpful.
Okay, so it's all about like picking the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
But then there's the question of when to actually use them. The book mentions this know when to use them principle. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's basically saying, remember that you're the focus. You don't need a slide for every single point you're making. Sometimes a really powerful image or a well-timed prop can be way more effective than like a wall of text.
For sure.
Oh, and always, always, always be prepared for those technology failures.
Yeah.
Have a backup plan just in case the projector decides to, take a break.
Always a good idea. Okay, so we've got the visual aids covered. What about handouts? Are those still a thing, in the digital age?
Absolutely. They can do so many things. Reinforce the information, give people extra resources, stuff you don't have time for in the presentation itself.
Right.
Think of it as like extending the learning even after the presentation's over.
I like that. But how do you make a handout that people will actually want to use?
One of the best tips in the book is to use them strategically. Don't just hand them out at the beginning. Time them to like specific points you're making or activities.
Oh, that's smart.
And of course, make sure they're well designed, easy to read. No one wants to try and figure out a wall of text. Use visuals, bullet points, plenty of white space to make it all easy to digest.
And one thing I love is when speakers include their contact info. Like on every page of the handout.
Yeah.
Makes it so easy to like follow up or connect on social media.
Totally. It's a small thing, but it really shows you're accessible,
Yeah.
And that you actually want to keep the conversation going.
All right, so we've talked visual aids, handouts, from facing our fears to finding our voice, and connecting with our audience. It's been quite a journey so far.
It has. And, it's a journey that's unique to every individual. What works for one speaker might not work for another, and that's okay. It's all about finding your own style and your own voice. Now, before we dive into like the next stage, I wanted to touch on a point that really resonated with me. It's that fork in the road that the book mentions, where you have to decide whether to stay on the path of personal development or take the leap into professional speaking. Have you ever considered making that transition yourself?
While I find immense satisfaction in sharing knowledge, a full-time speaking career isn't really my personal goal at this point. But the book does lay out some really compelling considerations. For those who might be interested in that path, it really emphasizes the importance of treating professional speaking like a business, which goes way beyond just giving great speeches. It's about marketing yourself, developing a niche, and managing like the financial aspect.
Yeah, the transitioning from a passionate hobbyist to like a savvy entrepreneur.
Exactly. And Spence also stresses the need for ongoing professional development, even for like seasoned speakers. There's always something new to learn. That's so inspiring. It really just reinforces the idea that this journey is all about continuous growth and improvement. Now, I wanted to pick your brain about something that I think often gets overlooked, the power of references and resources. Why does the book place such emphasis on this?
Well, it all comes down to credibility, citing your sources, whether you're quoting an expert, referencing a study, or even just sharing an anecdote from like a reputable publication. It really demonstrates that you've done your homework and you're not just pulling things out of thin air.
Like backing up your claims, solid evidence.
Yeah.
Which builds trust with your audience. Like if I were to tell you that listening to this deep dive can improve your public speaking skills, you'd probably be more inclined to believe me if I can back it up. With research and testimonials, right?
Exactly. Now, speaking of building and like a strong foundation, let's talk about another crucial aspect, the power of organization. Why do you think? A well-structured presentation is so important.
Well, I mean, I am all about structure and clarity. So this one definitely speaks to me personally. I think a clear framework. It helps your audience to follow along. And it keeps you on track. It's like giving them a roadmap so they don't get lost along the way.
Exactly. The book really emphasizes the importance of having like a clear beginning, middle, and end. You want to start with like a captivating opening that hooks the audience and makes them want to hear more.
Yeah, it's like the first few pages of a book, right? If it doesn't grab you right away, you're...
Exactly. And then you want to present your main points in a clear and logical way, using transitions to like guide the audience from one point to the next. Think of it like building a bridge, taking the audience on a journey from point A to point B.
And then there's the ending, which can be just as important as the beginning.
Oh, for sure. You want to end with a strong conclusion. That kind of summarizes your key message and leaves the audience with something to think about or act upon. It's that final impression that you want to leave them with.
Yeah, so it's like the grand finale of a fireworks show. You want to go out with a bang. Speaking of going out with a bang, what about incorporating those wow moments?
Yeah.
That really make a presentation memorable. Any tips from the book on that?
Yeah, well, the book definitely encourages the use of storytelling, which, we've already talked about, but it also suggests incorporating elements of surprise and intrigue. It could be like a thought-provoking question, a startling statistic, or even like a personal anecdote that reveals something unexpected.
Yeah, it's about breaking up the monotony and keeping the audience engaged. No one wants to sit through like an hour-long lecture. That feels like a dry textbook.
Exactly. You want to create those moments where the audience like sits up and takes notice.
And then, of course, there's the power of humor. A well-placed joke or a humorous anecdote can not only lighten the mood, but also make your message more memorable.
Absolutely. Humor is like a powerful tool for connecting with your audience and making them feel at ease. Just remember to keep it appropriate and relevant to your topic.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the hero's journey to the power of silence and the importance of storytelling. We've explored such a wide range of strategies and insights to help you unleash your public speaking superpowers.
What's the one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listener with as they embark on their own public speaking journey?
I think the most important thing is to remember that public speaking is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice and perseverance. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, to experiment, and to find what works best for you. And most importantly, have fun, when you're passionate about your message and you genuinely enjoy the process, and keep learning. We've distilled the key takeaways from public speaking superpowers. But there's always more to explore.
Absolutely. Each of these superpowers can be honed and refined as you gain experience and discover what works best for you. We've given you the tools and the inspiration. Now it's time to go out there and unleash your own public speaking superpowers.
And remember, you have a unique story to tell. What experience from your life could you weave into a presentation to connect with your audience on a deeper level? Think about it, and don't be afraid to share that story with the world. Your voice matters. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of public speaking. Now go forth and inspire.